Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be reading chapters 8 and 9 of The Littles. A few hours later, the Littles were ready to start. They were just outside the Big's house in the yard. Tom and his father had tied baskets to the two balloons. Granny Little sat with Mrs. Little and Baby Betsy in one of the baskets. The little suitcases were in the other basket under the second balloon. Some of Henry Big's marbles were piled on the bottom of the baskets. Their weight kept the balloons from flying away. There's a little picture. Six strings hung down from the two baskets. The tiny people on the ground tied the strings around their waists. They were going to pull the balloons and baskets with them on the trip to the Buttons' house. Now, Mr. Little said, take some marbles out of the baskets until the baskets go in the air. Soon the baskets were light enough for the balloons to lift them. They floated up until they were about 10 inches off the ground. Great, said Cousin Dinky. It's going to work. Let's move out, Mr. Little called. They all set off across the yard. The moon above the woods lighted their way. How's the ride up there? Tom called to his mother and grandmother. Fine, Tom, said Granny Little from the balloon. I'm sorry you all won't enjoy the trip as much as we will. We're up rather high, aren't we? Mr. Little said. I'm going to look down. Let's keep the talk down to a whisper, said Mr. Little. We certainly don't want any animals or big people to see us. Huh, said Uncle Pete. He patted a needle sword that was stuck in his belt. Any animal that tries to monkey around with us will feel this inch of cold steel in his gizzard. Almost everyone carried a weapon. Tom had a bow and arrows. Mr. Little carried a needle sword. Cousin Darrell and Della had spears. Lucy carried a favorite weapon, a pepper shaker. She had once saved the Littles from a weasel by shaking pepper into its eyes. That would burn. Even Mr. Little carried a weapon. Even Mrs. Little carried a weapon. She had the broken tip of a kitchen knife in her belt. Granny Little refused to carry a weapon. I never had to use one all these years I carried one, she said. It's just extra weight. The Littles crossed the Big's yard to the walnut tree. They were following Cousin Darrell's directions. He had made many hiking trips in the Big Valley, so he knew the safest way. They passed their walnut tree and entered a flower garden. It was early June and the hollyhocks were beginning to bloom. The giant flowers waved to and fro above them. A balloon brushed against a hollyhock, and a shower of pollen rained down on the Littles below. Achoo, said Uncle Pete. They left the flower garden to follow a path. After a long walk, they came to the big creek. There was a wooden footbridge crossing it. Careful, everyone, Cousin Darrell said. Don't fall through the cracks in the bridge. There's a 2-foot drop to the water. Tom looked down between the boards. Wow, it's dark down there. Here's a picture of them all making their trip. Look, said Lucy. She was pointing downstream. Animals! Raccoons, said Uncle Pete. Let's make tracks. He moved faster. They don't know we're here, Uncle Pete, said Cousin Darrell. The wind is blowing toward us so they can't smell us. Besides, they're busy feeding at the stream. The tiny family hurried off the bridge and down the path away from the stream. When they got to the Longs' yard, where the Buttons lived, they heard a terrible racket. Everybody stop! Mr. Little drew his needle sword. What is it? Lucy whispered. She moved closer to her father. Cats, Mr. Little said, and he pointed to 2 shadowy humps just ahead. 2 of them. And from the way they sound, they are about to have a fight. Uh-oh. Chapter 9. And here are the 2 cats. Those cats ran away, Uncle Pete. Can we go around them? They're right in front of the secret door into the house, Cousin Darrell said. We might have to wait here until morning, Tom said. Cats can sit and stare at each other for hours. I think we should wait here until they go away, Mrs. Little said. Well, I don't, said Uncle Pete. Any good fighter knows it's better to do something than nothing. You think we should attack them? Said Mr. Little. He turned to Cousin Darrell. Can you imagine our starting a fight with 2 cats? I can't. No, Uncle Pete said. Just Darrell and I should attack. As the two most experienced fighters, we can keep them busy while the rest of you sneak past of them into the house. Then what will happen to you? Mr. Little said. Oh, we'll get away somehow, Uncle Pete said. Good heavens, Uncle Pete, said Mr. Little. There's no time to be a hero. The cats haven't seen us. Surely we're smarter than they are. We can find a way past them. I've an idea, said Tom. Good, said Mr. Little. Let's hear your idea. First, we tie all the strings together to get one long string, Tom said. Then we tie a balloon with its basket to one end of the string. We tie the other end to the bush. Someone gets in the basket. We let the balloon and basket go all the way up, as high as the string will let them go. Tom took a deep breath. While that's happening, the rest of the people get over near the secret door. Then the person in the balloon makes a hissing sound. The cats will come over to see what it is, and everybody runs to the secret door. And the man in the balloon, said Mr. Little, what happens to him? He'll be safe up in the air, Tom said. The cats won't be able to get him. After they go away, he pulls himself down. Everyone agreed that Tom's idea was the best and safest one for getting into the house. Cousin Darrell said he would go up in the balloon. Tom begged to go with him. Mrs. Little said, he's too young. It may not be safe. I really wish he wouldn't. Mr. Little said, Tom's not too young to think up a good idea to help his family. He can be trusted not to do anything foolish. I'm going to let him go with his cousin. It will be a good experience for him. Granny Little whispered to Mrs. Little, Darrell has had 1,000 more dangerous adventures than going up in that balloon. He wouldn't take Tom with him if he didn't think it was perfectly safe. I'm really a coward, Mrs. Little whispered to Granny, but I want Tom to be brave. He'll be all right, said Granny Little. She patted Mrs. Little's hand. And you're not a coward. You're afraid sometimes, but who isn't? The Littles unloaded the balloon basket that carried the suitcases. They left the marbles in the basket, then they loaded some of the suitcases into the other balloon basket and carried the rest. Let's move out and get nearer the house, Mr. Little said. We'll stay out of the light of the moon and go through the garden so the cats don't see us. And no noise. Tiny people started out. Please be careful, Tom, whispered Mrs. Little. Cousin Darrell and Tom began to tie the strings together. Make square knots, Tom, Cousin Darrell said. They won't slip. Soon they had a piece of string 8 feet long. They tied one end to the balloon basket and the other end to the bush. Tom and Cousin Darrell climbed aboard. They unloaded some marbles to lighten the weight. Soon the airship was rising. Let's make some noises now, Cousin Darrell said. The two Littles hissed at the cats. When the cats heard the noise, they stopped fighting. They stretched their necks, sniffed, and turned toward the noise. They crouched down and sneaked across the yard to see what was going on. Here's a picture. As soon as the cats got near, Cousin Darrell and Tom stopped hissing. The cats walked back and forth, staring at the balloon. Cousin Dinky and Tom waited quietly, but now the rest of the Littles were safely in the house, but the cats wouldn't go away. I hate to bop those poor cats, said Cousin Darrell. I suppose we'll have to since they won't leave. He picked up 2 marbles. You aim for the one on the left, Tom. Fire when I say fire, and try to hit him the first time. We want to give them a good scare. Tom got 2 marbles and set himself ready to throw. Ready? Whispered Cousin Darrell. Aim, fire! Bombs away. Yow! Swish, swish, the cats ran off. Silence. They're gone, Cousin Darrell said. Tom, you and I are pretty good marble players. Cousin Darrell began pulling on the string that held the balloon to the bush below. They moved slowly toward the ground. Suddenly the string went limp. Cousin Darrell fell over backwards. What happened? Said Tom. He rushed to the edge of the basket. The ground seemed to be moving away from them. One of those knots didn't hold, shouted Cousin Darrell. The string broke. The balloon shot up in the air. It was now above the trees and drifting away in the wind. Should I stop there? Okay. Tom drew an arrow to his bow. He aimed at the balloon. We've got to let the gas out, he said. No, Tom, no, said Cousin Darrell. He held his hand in front of the arrow. It's a rubber balloon. It would rip apart and would be killed in the fall. Cousin Darrell climbed up on the side of the basket. He reached for the cord tied to the opening of the balloon. The knot was a hard one. Cousin Darrell needed all his strength to untie it. The balloon went higher, drifting with the wind. Houses were so far below they looked like toys. Finally, Cousin Darrell got the knot loose. Whoosh! Some of the gas escaped. The balloon began to drift down. Now Cousin Darrell had to hold the tight knot to keep the gas from escaping too fast. Slowly, slowly, the balloon settled down toward the ground. The tops of the trees were even with the balloon now. Thump! The basket hit the ground. The cousins were tossed into a clump of grass. Well, Tom, Cousin Darrell said, that was an unexpected adventure. Are you all right? Tom didn't answer. He was pointing to a pair of yellow eyes staring at them from under the bush. I wonder what it could be. Can you guys make a prediction and tell your parents what you think might be in the bush and what was your favorite part? See you later, guys.